Many fans of The Lord of the Rings have probably wondered why Gandalf did not simply face Sauron in personal combat to end the war. After all, they are both supernatural spirits of the exact same order of magical power. It would seem completely logical to assume that their abilities were comparable, meaning the Grey Wizard might have had a reasonable chance at victory. Yet throughout the entire epic story, the famous wizard never once seeks a personal physical duel with the Dark Lord. He never travels directly into the dark land of Mordor to physically challenge his terrible enemy. He does not engage the enemy leader in a magical duel and never even comes close to his physical location. This constant distance truly looks like a highly deliberate avoidance of direct confrontation. The specific reasons for this careful choice are deeply rooted in the historical lore created by John Ronald Reuel Tolkien. Reason 1 explores the strict physical limits of a mortal body. The 5 powerful wizards sent to Middle-earth did not merely take on the temporary appearance of human men. They were literally incarnated into real physical bodies that constantly experienced fatigue, extreme hunger, natural thirst, and the unstoppable aging process. Because of this severe physical limitation, their natural magical power was highly restricted compared to immortal spirits without physical forms. Sauron, on the other hand, was never tightly bound by such earthly physical restrictions. Even after losing his physical form, he could easily return as long as his dark spirit endured and his golden ring existed. Gandalf, by contrast, only returned after his terrible death in battle with the fiery demon through the highly direct intervention of the supreme creator himself. For the good wizard, losing a grand duel with Sauron would mean a complete permanent failure and the tragic end of his vital mission. Reason 2 points out that Sauron was simply much stronger by his very fundamental nature. Although both spirits originally belonged to the same divine order, their innate power levels were definitely not equal. The historical texts describe a very strict hierarchy, even among the highest angelic beings of the universe. The Dark Master Melkor was significantly stronger than all the other gods combined, while Manwë surpassed the rest, and Aule held his own unique supreme rank. The exact same power hierarchy can be logically assumed for the lesser ranks of magical spirits. Sauron was a highly gifted pupil of the divine smith Aule, and was already considered one of the mightiest beings in the first age of the world. He greatly surpassed not only lesser spirits like the great eagles, but also many of his divine equals in rank. Olorin, who was later known as Gandalf, had many wonderful mental talents, but in raw magical power he lagged far behind his enemy even before coming to the mortal lands. Reason 3 involves the truly incredible magical power of the single ruling ring. The Dark Lord had deliberately invested a vast portion of his own innate power into this golden artifact to enhance his terrible abilities even further. This tremendous magical boost made him nearly completely unmatched in raw supernatural strength. With this dangerous band of gold, he safely restored his lost physical strength and gained complete mental dominion over the bearers of the other rings. No other spirit in the whole world, including the brave Gandalf, possessed such a magnificently powerful magical artifact. With this precious treasure, Sauron stood proudly at the absolute peak of his dark magical abilities. Any desperate attempt to confront him directly under these terrible circumstances would have been close to guaranteed suicide. The wise wizard fully knew he absolutely could not successfully compete with an immortal enemy wielding such immense concentrated energy. Reason 4 highlights the massive dark legacy left behind by his former evil master. Sauron gladly inherited not only terrible magical knowledge, but also an entire working infrastructure of pure, endless evil. The ancient enemy left behind massive armies of horrible monsters and entire nations of corrupt men who would happily serve darkness for countless generations. These terrifying military forces naturally obeyed their newly crowned master almost automatically, without any tiny bit of hesitation. Sauron simply continued his evil master's grand, dark work, making it perfectly natural for these vile creatures to blindly follow his harsh commands. Gandalf, even with immense respect and authority among the free peoples, constantly had to persuade, gently lead, and peacefully unite his cautious allies. The busy wizard could not simply snap his old fingers and instantly summon a massive army totally willing to die for his noble cause. He had to work extremely hard to carefully build fragile alliances, while his mortal enemy already safely controlled endless mighty legions. Reason 5 focuses deeply on the totally different kinds of natural power these two magical beings possessed. The absolute main difference was that the Grey Wizard was entirely not a military warlord, but rather a gentle spiritual inspirer. His primary holy task was to constantly give hope, carefully guide the lost, patiently teach the ignorant, and peacefully unite the divided kingdoms. Sauron acted solely as a brutal military commander and violent global conqueror who cruelly ruled and dominated everything completely directly. The Dark Ruler had been deeply hardened in terrible violent wars since the earliest ancient days of the young world. He spent many thousands of years actively participating in bloody sieges, creatively devising military strategies, and brutally using cruel magic as a devastating weapon of mass destruction. Gandalf only fought physically when absolutely necessary to protect his own life or the lives of his dear friends. Otherwise, the wise old man always relied deeply on his dear allies and their personal bravery to achieve ultimate victory. Reason 6 reveals a highly important point about a secret divine mission that many people often easily overlook. The Grey Wanderer was sent to the mortal lands with a very specific and incredibly strict spiritual objective. His primary goal was definitely not to personally defeat the terrible enemy, but to completely help the free peoples violently resist the spreading darkness entirely by themselves. The famous author stated completely explicitly in his personal letters that the 5 wizards were tightly bound by supreme divine prohibitions. These holy heavenly messengers were absolutely not allowed to use their glorious divine power for open public dominion over innocent mortal beings. They simply had to act strictly as humble, friendly advisers, gentle, spiritual inspirers, and helpful guides, instead of acting like arrogant generals issuing strict military orders. Even if the brave wizard had truly wanted to desperately duel his enemy, he would have totally violated the very core essence of his holy mission. Doing so would perhaps quickly cause him to completely lose his sacred right to safely remain in the mortal world. Reason 7 directly addresses the terrifyingly high mental risk of total spiritual corruption. Gandalf understood perfectly well that a highly direct, violent clash with his enemy was extremely dangerous, especially in the dangerously close physical presence of the ruling ring. He completely knew this was not just a simple physical risk of battle defeat, but a very real, severe danger of falling entirely under the Dark Lord's mental control. As highly powerful angelic spirits, their brilliant minds could violently battle not only through traditional physical weapons or spells, but also through raw, inner spiritual force. At the absolute slightest single moment of mental weakness, the good grey wizard could easily become a totally mindless, humble servant of pure evil. The wise old man bravely admitted to his dear friends that he greatly feared even briefly touching the cursed dark jewelry. He honestly explained that his highly genuine desire to do good things would eventually slowly twist into a terrible new bloody horror. In a brutal mental battle with the terrible Dark Lord, this totally terrible unseen danger would have been fiercely magnified many thousands of times. Reason 8 slowly explains the incredibly disastrous political world consequences that could easily follow a magical duel. Even if the wise wizard somehow miraculously defeated his mighty ancient enemy in personal, violent combat, the resulting aftermath could have been truly, absolutely terrible. The evil lord was simply not just a solitary lone operator acting entirely by himself in an empty, dark, barren wasteland. His incredibly vast political power securely rested on massive, brutal armies, widespread global terror, and a highly complex, cruel hierarchy of brutal mental control. In the likely event of his sudden death, another terrible commander could have quickly taken the empty, dark throne. This new leader might have been someone even more dangerously chaotic and completely unpredictable. Furthermore, simply killing the physical body would absolutely not have destroyed the cursed Golden Band. It would remain a dangerous source of corrupting power that could easily spark a completely new, devastating war among the already weakened peoples. Reason 9 considers the terrifying reality of entirely unknown magical powers. The famous author never fully revealed the complete arsenal of dark abilities possessed by the terrible villain. We merely know he was an absolute master of trickery, mental deception, artifact creation, and the forced domination of free will. There is excellent logical reason to believe he secretly possessed strange abilities that no living wizard could ever successfully match in a dangerous physical battle. He might have been truly capable of directly altering the fundamental physical fabric of the entire world. Some historical scholars believe he could completely change the basic nature of physical objects, or even magically corrupt the deep inner essence of living beings. Facing such an unpredictable enemy would be exactly like playing a serious board game against someone who could freely change the board pieces right in the middle of a strategic move. The pure, wild unpredictability of these hidden magical talents made any direct, violent assault completely foolish. Reason 10 forces us to carefully weigh the potentially unbearable heavy price of an extremely unlikely victory. Even if the Grey Pilgrim had somehow been able to successfully win the brutal fight, the final cost might have been far too high for the broken world to pay. He fully knew that a massive battle against such pure evil would require absolutely all his remaining strength and very possibly his own fragile mortal life. Unlike his immortal evil counterpart, the wizard absolutely could not safely return from physical death without the highest divine creator deciding to miraculously send him back. If the wise old man tragically fell in a magical battle, the mortal world would be left entirely without one of its most important guiding allies. Without his extremely vital spiritual guidance, the final slim chance for a lasting, peaceful victory could vanish forever in the blinking of an eye. That is exactly why the intelligent wizard carefully chose a difficult, noble path that might seem noticeably less violently heroic at first casual glance. He thoughtfully chose the ultimately correct path of quietly and completely destroying the dangerous artifact rather than foolishly dueling the terrible Dark Lord. This detailed historical analysis can also be beautifully polished into a much more traditional narrative style if you truly desire it. It could be carefully rewritten to sound exactly like a lost historical appendix directly from the epic books of The Lord of the Rings. All you have to do is simply ask for this highly specific creative adjustment to be completely applied. The final text would wonderfully capture the exact magical tone and unique, majestic voice of the original beloved author.